Flames of Desperation, Marcus Greystone. The day had started like any other for Marcus Ash Greystone, an ordinary foot soldier in the circle of flame, but today there was an unusual sense of anticipation in the air. The orders had been delivered directly by Firefly himself, the second in command of the circle, and Ash could hardly believe his luck. To serve alongside Firefly, the one who stood just beneath the great heatwave, was both an honor and a test of his mettle. Firefly's presence alone, with his fierce reputation and sharp demeanor, made Ash's heart pound with both awe and a gnawing uncertainty. Standing in formation with 18 other soldiers, Ash watched as Firefly paced back and forth, issuing commands. The man had a presence like no other, a charisma born from both fear and respect. His eyes seemed to pierce right through everyone, and his words were decisive, slicing through the crisp morning air. There was no time for second thoughts, no room for hesitation. Today, they were tasked with something unusual. They were attacking an orphanage, one of the most well-known hideouts of the Ironborn. Their objective was clear: capture Ulf Ironborn alive and find an important item he was hiding. Firefly had kept the details of the item vague, and none of them knew exactly what they were looking for. The only clue Firefly gave them was that they would know it when they saw it. The thought had bothered Ash since the briefing. What could possibly be so important that it warranted attacking a house filled with children? As Firefly gave the final orders, Ash's resolve wavered for just a moment. These kids, they were just orphans, caught in the crossfire of something they couldn't possibly understand. The attack felt cruel, unnecessary, and wrong. But orders were orders, and Heatwave's orders were absolute. Ash had seen firsthand what happened to those who disobeyed, those who questioned the vision of the circle. He couldn't afford to doubt, not now. The loyalty he bore to Heatwave was a fire that burned in his chest, compelling him to move forward, no matter how his conscience screamed. With Firefly leading the charge, the attack began. The soldiers moved with precision, guns blazing as they breached the old orphanage. The sharp crackle of flames and the acrid smell of burning wood and chemicals filled the air. Ash and a few others moved systematically through the building, while others kept watch outside, ready to intercept any stragglers or reinforce their comrades if needed. Their orders were simple: find Ulf Ironborn, and find the item. Ash moved swiftly, searching rooms on the lower floor, throwing open cabinets and rifling through drawers, his eyes darting around, looking for anything that seemed out of place or valuable. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to be looking for. Firefly's words echoed in his mind: "You'll know it when you see it." It was vague, but Ash trusted that the object would reveal its significance when the time came. Suddenly, he heard a voice call out from the corridor, someone who clearly wasn't one of his own. Who would be here at a time like this? Did they not see the chaos around them? Whoever it was had a death wish. He moved to the door, his heart pounding, ready to confront this intruder. As soon as he poked his head out, something soft and fast struck his face. A foam ball. The impact left his vision obscured, and he scrambled to wipe his eyes clean. Panic clawed at his chest. Before he could react properly, another substance hit him. A thick, dark ink splattered across his face, momentarily blinding him once again. His instincts screamed at him to fight, but confusion and panic slowed his movements. Suddenly, they were on him, 3 figures, grappling and struggling in the narrow corridor. He swung wildly, trying to hit back, but his vision was impaired, and his ears rang with the chaos of shouting and footsteps. A hard shove sent him sprawling to the ground, and before he could get back up, a shot rang out, grazing the side of his head. Pain like he'd never known erupted, and he clutched his head, feeling the warmth of his own blood running down his neck. The shot had taken off his earlobe, and the pain was excruciating. Ash lay there, disoriented and gasping, waiting for the final blow. But instead, he felt hands on him, not rough, but steady. He blinked through the pain, trying to focus, and saw one of the men he had just been fighting. The man was kneeling beside him, using a piece of cloth to press against the wound, stemming the flow of blood. Ash's mind reeled. This didn't make any sense. Why was this man helping him? He was the enemy. Why? Ash croaked, his voice barely audible over the ringing in his ears. His eyes met those of his attacker, no, his savior. The man's expression was intense but not unkind. "Just go," the man said firmly. "Leave while you still can. There's nothing here worth dying for." Ash hesitated, confusion and pain clouding his thoughts. He had come here to capture Ulf, to follow orders, to serve the Circle. But now, faced with the kindness of someone who should have wanted him dead, the resolve he had clung to began to crumble. He could hear the chaos still raging throughout the building, shouts, crashes, the crackle of flames, and something inside him snapped. He didn't want to die here. Not like this. Not for something he didn't even understand. Against everything he had been trained to do, Ash pushed himself to his feet, his head spinning, and ran. He ran past the chaos, past the shattered remnants of doors and furniture, past the frightened cries of children and the barking orders of his fellow soldiers. He burst out of the orphanage into the cold night air, his breath coming in ragged gasps, and he kept running, leaving the building, and the mission, behind. Marcus stumbled out of the orphanage, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear and confusion, unsure of where to go next. The chaos inside the building had rattled him deeply, and now, standing in the harsh daylight, the thick smoke rising behind him made everything feel like a waking nightmare. The midday sun was blotted by the plumes of black, casting twisted shadows on the street. Just ahead, he saw the remains of the balloon, Firefly's intended escape route, now nothing more than a heap of burning fabric and twisted metal. The sight made his stomach drop. The plan was definitely not going according to what had been laid out. It seemed that everything was falling apart, and Marcus couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that they had completely underestimated the resistance they would face today. His heart raced as he considered his options. He had nowhere to go, but he knew this wasn't the only strike Heatwave had planned for today. The Circle of Flame had launched attacks across multiple locations simultaneously, an ambitious, large-scale operation that was supposed to cripple their enemies and bring them closer to dominance in Doskvol. This orphanage was just one of the targets. Marcus decided he might still be able to contribute by heading to the next point. He might still prove his loyalty to the Circle by aiding his comrades there. Anything would be better than facing the failure of this attack empty-handed. With determination, he moved quickly through the winding streets, his eyes darting nervously into the daylight shadows, wary of any signs of pursuit. He crossed the canal, the water beneath him bright and shimmering under the midday sun, the cold wind rushing through the narrow streets, cutting into his skin. When he reached the next location, what he saw turned his stomach once more. Chaos. The scene was an absolute mess. The Circle of Flame soldiers were there, but they were no longer in control. They were engaged in an intense battle, and Marcus could see immediately that they were struggling. Their adversaries were wearing clothes that he recognized, Skoulander refugees. The unmistakable accents of their defiant shouts and the fierce resilience in their attacks were all too familiar. Marcus watched from a distance, his breath catching in his throat as he saw water-based weapons wielded by the refugees, spraying jets of high-pressure water at the soldiers of the Circle. The air sizzled with steam as water met flame, creating a disorienting mist that clouded the battlefield. How had this happened? Who had called the Skoulanders here? This was supposed to be a calculated attack, with overwhelming force at multiple locations, each one precisely coordinated for maximum effect. But now, looking at the chaos in front of him, Marcus knew that everything had gone wrong. This wasn't the dominance they had planned, it was a catastrophe. And with this much noise, this much violence, it wouldn't be long before the law enforcement agencies showed up, faster than any of them had anticipated. He had to leave. The mission had failed, and staying here any longer was nothing short of suicide. Marcus's loyalty to the Circle of Flame was strong, but he also knew that he had to be alive if he wanted to serve them again. He had faced death once today, and the prospect of doing it again in this chaos, amidst flames and water and desperate refugees, was too much. Turning on his heel, Marcus began to run. He ran back the way he had come, away from the battle, away from the canal, away from the chaos that had erupted across Doskvol today. His only thought was survival. He would make it back to the base of operations, he would find a way to explain his actions to Heatwave. He knew that Heatwave's wrath would be terrible, that much was inevitable, but it was a wrath he was willing to face, so long as he could see another dawn. Today was not about loyalty. It wasn't about victory, or power, or glory for the Circle of Flame. Today, for Marcus Greystone, was simply about survival. And as he sprinted through the winding alleys, his earlobe still aching, the stinging reminder of what he had been through, one thought echoed over and over in his mind: he would live to fight another day. He would face the consequences, but at least he would be alive to do so.